Hey everyone, welcome to Sonic Discovery. I am your host, David Correa. On this episode, we'll be talking about 4 new releases from Beach House, Leon Bridges, Iceage, and Jon Hopkins. Well guys, thanks so much for clicking play on the episode. We have tons to get to, so let's get straight into it. We're going to open up the show talking about the newest release from Beach House. This is called 7. Now, it's called 7 for different reasons. It is their 7th album, so that's simple enough. If you're not familiar with Beach House, they are a dream pop duo made up of Victoria Legrand and Alex Scally, and they are from Baltimore, and they've been going strong. They've released several albums that have, many albums that have all attained critical acclaim. Teen Dream, Bloom, Depression Cherry, just on and on. And on this new release, they're trying out some new things. They are working with producer Sonic Boom, who is Peter Kemper of the band Spaceman 3. And with his help, they are taking their signature dream pop sound that they've had, and they're tweaking it enough to where that sound still remains, but there's a lot of interesting sounds coming through in the mix, especially when you listen to this on headphones. You're going to hear just these random little sounds come in and out at times. Also, there's a lot of layering on the guitar. So although there'll be like a clean guitar sound, underneath there's going to be another guitar with a lot of fuzz on it. Lyrically here, Victoria mentioned that it really hits on 2 different themes. The first is the pressure and conditions that our society has placed on women in the past and the present, and the other being the beauty that arises in dealing with darkness. The album opens up with the track Dark Spring, and here, just right off the bat, you get a larger drum presence that they've had in their previous records. They're just pounding away here. They're very commanding. And these nice little shimmering guitar lines. Their voices here are also, I like to say magical. That's a way I like to describe it. But it has that same dreamy quality. And at the end of the track, there's a lot of cymbal crashes that close it out. Pay No Mind has a deeper bass presence to open with a clear guitar over this mellow, slow-tempoed track. There's some bright strums of the guitar that sound really nice, and then you can hear that other layered guitar in the back with a lot of fuzz. And this one has a lot of different layering and guitar effects going on. And this is a pretty sad song. What I kind of took from the lyrics, a little bit more, is that it's talking about a fleeting love. Lemon Glow was the first track that we got to hear off of this album, and this one is a big departure. It starts off with this really cool loop synth sound that continues throughout the whole song, and the beat that's on here almost kind of had like a hip-hop sound to me. There's hazy guitar effects that happen throughout as well, and the end is really cool with these like loud pounding drums. Here she talks about someone's love that makes you feel alive. El Inconnu has this really cool effect with a lot of different layerings going on with Victoria's voice. The guitar line in here too reminded me a lot of a song from the Brian Eno album, Another Green World. There's a little shift in the music here halfway through, and this second part introduces some haunting vocals, the drums start coming in, and we get more of that signature guitar line as well. Drunk in LA has a more reminiscent sound of their older stuff. Overall, it has a very epic sound to the track, as Victoria really makes the song soar as she sings out that chorus. And later on in the track, towards the end, we have this guitar that comes in that really cuts through the song, and this is something a little different from them. there's a little bit more oomph to this guitar solo. Dive is another early single from the album. This has a more familiar sound as well, as it opens up with an organ. It does have this thumping kick drum and these nice long guitar strums. And then around the 2:30 mark, it shifts into a whole different section with a really fast strumming guitar. And here is when the guitar solo comes in that gives the song more of a shoegaze quality. Black Car opens up with a great synth pattern, and the drums are pounding away again. There's this wall of organs too that slowly starts building up in the track, and then eventually we get this piercing synth that comes in and just adds to this wall of sound that we have. Although the song Woo opens up with a deep bass and a beat behind it, you can still really hear the band's signature sound coming through. This one also has these cool little effects in the background. They're like vocal effects. Once you hear it, you're gonna be like, wait, what the heck was that? And then the album closes with Last Ride, which focuses on Victoria's fascination with singer Nico. This one opens up with soft synths as the guitars and the drums start building up as the song starts gaining momentum as it keeps going. On the last minute and a half, we have the loud guitar coming in with wails and different effects that continue until the song slowly closes out with a fade. Overall, I really love this album. It might actually end up being my favorite Beach House album once I've listened to it several more times. They've taken on their signature sound that I was already a fan of, and they just add all these tiny little effects with the guitars and different synths and incorporating different beats that just adds a whole other dimension to this band. This is gonna get a score of a 9.5 out of 10 from me. So it definitely comes with a high recommendation. I want you all to go check this out. Next up for review, we have the second release from singer Leon Bridges. This is called Good Thing. Now, when Leon landed his debut album Coming Home, it got a lot of people's attention because in it, he was bringing back a vintage sound, like a vintage R&B sound that was very reminiscent of Sam Cooke. That's what people kept saying. On here, he changes things up a bit. You can definitely hear songs like that on this album, but he also livens things up and, has some songs that may get you grooving a bit. I'm not really sure if that really works to his advantage because the best songs on here still end up being the slower ones. The album opens up with a single, Bet Ain't Worth the Hand, which almost has like a Disney-like intro with these harps and this cool little swell up that it does. This is a beautiful ballad with soft strings, and here he's saying that he'd like to commit to this girl, but his life is fast-paced, and he really can't promise that he's gonna be around often. But despite this, it seems like she's still willing to stick around. After that, we have another single, Bad Bad News, which is my personal favorite track on this album. This one is much more upbeat, it has a nice groove, and it has a jazzy quality to it with the horns and the guitar soloing that goes on. I also really like these little ad-libs that his backing band throw into the song. Here he's expressing that people kept telling him that life was really gonna make things hard for him, but he's not gonna listen to them. He's not gonna let that slow him down on his way to the top. Shy is a track that reminded me more of his stuff from his first album with its laid-back acoustic R&B sound. Here he's trying to get this girl to come over to him tonight, but he knows that she's kind of shy and needs some time to warm up to him. And here it seems like he's really willing to wait around for her. Beyond is another track that has this acoustic R&B sound, but it also kind of gave me a country vibe as well. On here, he's gushing over this girl that he thinks is the one, and his friends keep telling him that he's a fool for not sealing up the deal. To me, this song has potential to be in a lot of different weddings as a couple's first dance. One of Leon's songs from his previous album, Coming Home, came really close to being the one at my wedding. If It Feels Good, Then It Must Be is one of the more up-tempo dancey songs on this album. Here, like the title suggests, he's talking to a girl and telling her that if what they're doing feels good, then it's probably not a bad thing. This is followed up by another up-tempo track, You Don't Know, and this one was a lot stronger in my mind. It has a funky groove and a snappy beat, and when he goes into his little falsetto on the chorus, this really gave me a Michael Jackson vibe. Actually, this sounds like it could have been on Off the Wall. Then things get brought back down to his more signature sound on the track Misses, where it's more acoustic R&B. This is a pretty sexy song as he's wondering why he's stuck in this tumultuous relationship, and he's reminded once the girl climbs on top of him. He says, "When you say that little thing I like, I know it's all worth the fight." And then the album closes up nicely with the jazzy sounding Georgia to Texas. I was a big fan of the upright bass on here, and on this track he's basically telling us his story of moving from place to place, really trying to find his own footing, and eventually music is the thing that really fills in that void. Overall, I was pretty happy with this release. A nice follow-up for Leon, where he still keeps on to his more familiar sound, but also introduces something new, although it might not necessarily work all the time. This is going to get a score of a 7 out of 10 from me. So if you're interested in listening to some smooth R&B with some funky tracks, then you might want to give this a listen. Next up, we'll be talking about album number 4 from Danish band Iceage. This is called Beyondless. Like I mentioned, this is album number 4 for them. Their first 2 albums had a much more aggressive sound to them, but I'm not familiar with those albums. I was actually introduced to this band on their 3rd release, which was 2014's Plowing into the Field of Love. What I liked about that album is that it still kind of had some of the intensity that they had on their first releases, but also brought in, some different sounds, kind of mellowed out a bit, and that's what I like, when a band is able to show me a little bit of both sides, which is exactly what we get on this release. The album opens up really strong with the track Hurrah, which is a great rocking opener with a lot of energy. Here, they're talking about man's natural fixation with war and killing each other. Then we have the track Painkiller, which has some added vocals from Sky Ferreira. This is another rocking track that has some added horns that provide a whole different dynamic to this track. Here, they talk about the need of someone's presence to bring you joy into your life and the resentment that may come from that being the case, since they basically end up being your painkiller. Under the Sun has a slower tempo and a darker tone with the acoustic guitars that almost gives the track like a Western feel. I love the contrast here between the verses and the chorus, and the build-up at the end with the added strings. That was a real nice touch. I love the riff that opens up the next track, The Day the Music Dies. This has a great stomp to it, and also the added horns gives the song a much fuller sound. The horns are especially effective on the chorus when it takes the song to a much grander level. Here he feels like he's stuck in a rut when all he wants to do is progress forward. Plead the Fifth has some added piano, a great groove brought on by the bass and the drums, and the vocals here really reminded me of Iggy Pop with just the overall delivery, especially when they go into the la 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 section. I believe here they're talking about the desire to just kind of lose control. Catch It has a slower, darker vibe with snarling vocals, and I just love the overall layered sound of this track, especially on the chorus when it opens up with this dirgy sounding bass and these crisp acoustic guitars. The piano on here also provides a honky-tonk vibe. At the 340 mark, the music here shifts into a really fast, punishing section just to have it come back down to the dirge that it was before. Showtime has a nice build-up with the tambourine and the bass to start off, as then the horns come in and add this mysterious flair to this track. I like the dark tone and the call and response between the bass and the guitar. The track then takes a little left turn when it gets to the bridge, and we go into this vaudevillian-styled section, as throughout the song, he's talking about a singer that can't really cope with the pressure of the stardom he's achieved, so he decides to make a whole spectacle of blowing out his brains on stage. Finally, the album closes off with the title track Beyondless, which has a more aggressive sound like the openers. It has this cool growl to it, as the guitars too kind of cut through the song like a saw. The strings on here provide this eeriness to the track, as the chorus just kind of takes that eerie factor to a whole other level. Overall, I was a big fan of this release. The music still has a lot of darkness and intensity to it, and there's still enough on here, these little flashes of brightness that they give off some color. The vocals here aren't my favorite, just because I like a guy who's able to belt out some good notes, but it does serve the music very well. This is going to get a score of an 8.5 out of 10 from me, so yet another one that gets a recommendation for you guys to check out. And the last album for review is the latest from British producer Jon Hopkins. This is called Singularity. This is the 5th album overall for Jon, and his last release, 2013's Immunity, got great reviews. It was critically acclaimed all throughout, and even was a nominee for Britain's biggest honor, the Mercury Prize. On this release, we get both a dancier feel from some of the tracks, but also within them, these nice calming ambient moments. That nice little wave of dancier moments and more ambient ethereal can be found on the first few tracks. The title track Singularity, Emerald Rush, Neon Pattern Drum, and Everything Connects all go through these different movements. These are all pretty long songs too. The shortest one's around 5.5 minutes, and then Everything Connected goes all the way up to 10. And through them, they go through these just this constant flow of a pounding house beat with a lot of different synth patterns kind of going along with it and different synth melodies emerging. And then to these moments where it kind of calms down for a bit just to have that beat come back and reinforce the track. And then things kind of change halfway through as we go into the track Feel First Life, which is the first true, more ethereal sounding track on here. This is still 5 minutes, so these tracks still go on for a long length. But this starts like the second half of the album, which has a more calming, relaxing feel throughout. The only track that really challenges this notion is the song Luminous Beings, which is the longest track at 12 minutes. This one has a bass and a beat that become pretty prominent, and it gets it going, and it makes you feel like the song is really going to go to another level, but it just kind of keeps it there. And it brings it back down, and it brings it back up to this level, but never really goes all the way. Overall, I was a fan of this release. If you want to listen to something that is a little bit more beat driven, but also you want to listen to something that's a bit more calming, this album gives you the best of both worlds. The only thing that was a problem for me is that I feel like it really splits the album down in half, down the middle, where I feel that if it would have maybe spread this out throughout a little bit more, thrown in some of the shorter ambient tracks, a little bit up in the album, and maybe more of the dancier moving tracks a little further towards the back, would have, rounded it out a little bit better, but still a very satisfying listen. This is going to get a score of an 8 out of 10 from me. So if you're in the mood for having some real good, chill, relaxing music that will still have a constant beat and something you can kind of dance to, then I recommend you give this a try. Well, guys, that's it for this episode. Thanks so much for clicking play. If you have any recommendations or comments or anything like that, make sure to leave those down there at the bottom. And while you're there, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. I'm going to be taking a little break from the show, so I'm not really sure what's going to be on the next one or when that one will come out. But in the meantime, I hope that you guys still keep listening and discovering.